Welcome back, and moving on to our first segment for today, checking out more about the latest developments taking place in the Iran-Israel war. And over the phone, we have Ambassador Medhat Miligy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. So first of all, I would like to shed the light on, right now we can see the current situation, and we can see also Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Turkey playing a major role from behind the scenes, trying to contain the situation, trying to control things as much as they can, just to prevent chaos in the whole region. How do you see this?
Well, actually, I mean, although we have three roles of three regional powers, but of course they cannot all be measured the same way. I mean, Egypt has traditionally positioned itself as a mediator, and although, as we all know, the relations with Iran were not the best before this war, but Egypt, due to its historic role and due to its geopolitical presence in the region, has to step in to try to find a solution to actually stop this war from escalating towards a regional war that could inflame and engulf the whole region in its complexity. So Egypt actually has this, although we don't want to reach a confrontation with Israel. It's not in our best interest for the time being, at least. But we will continue to exploit our relations with all the parties to try to find a solution. In the case of Saudi Arabia, although its policy is very independent and trying to play a major role in the region's activity, but of course we've seen that it's in a certain way entangled in its relation with the West, and even the process of normalization relations with Israel that has been halted due to the events that took place in Palestine, and even its position about not having any normal relation with Israel before the establishment of the Palestinian state. So this gives it some liberty to work a little bit more. Turkey, of course, is trying to balance its stance between its NATO membership on one hand and its desire to become the leader of the Muslim world in another way, and that's why it's trying to play a role, although it's usually more vocal than active in the regional conflict. However, I think that the roles of the three countries can be seen more, I think, behind the scenes than on the stage itself, because of the reservations that each country have in this. But I believe that Egypt is the best placed one, since we have our heritage in this domain on one hand, and because we have quite balanced relation with each party of all parties. But of course, it all depends on a political will from the other side and the willingness to listen to any initiative that's going to be or is already presented by Egypt.
So what are the options for de-escalation? And from your own point of view, when we talk about what kind of indications of a back channel diplomacy at work?
Well, in the case of de-escalation, just as I mentioned, I think it all depends on the willingness of the major players. And here I mean specifically Israel and the United States. The United States has to impose, if it really wants to de-escalate the situation, it has to impose limits on Israeli military behavior. I mean, this privileged status of Israel within the Western Bloc in general and with the United States specifically actually puts Israel above impunity and above the international law. And actually, I think that even we can even say something more, that uh, even if we look at the mainstream Western media that actually reveals the situation, we are going to find that the terms that are used with Israel is self-defense. And these are terms that are reserved usually for only allies. While if we are talking about resistance, it's becoming like a synonym word for terrorism. Well, unless you're Ukraine, of course, in this case, then yes, you are resisting. So there is a biased language, and I think it's not just in the media. I think it's also in the political arena that sustains the illusion of a presence of Israeli moral superiority, while Iran or Palestine are illustrated as villains in this American movie, if I can say so. But the idea is that we have, as our media and our political narratives, we have to challenge this deconstruction of the Western narrative. I mean, we have to expose the double standards, to highlight that Israel is enjoying impunity, and even to amplify the legitimate rights of the people of the region, especially the Palestinian, and of course the Iranian now as being violated by Israel. I mean, it was Israel, we should not forget that it was Israel who primarily attacked Iran, a country that has signed the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, while Israel itself, who has a nuclear arsenal, is not a signatory of the treaty, and yet it's enjoying a full-fledged nuclear facilities, while Iran, although according to the IAEA, have mentioned that Iran did not reach the level of producing nuclear weapons, but the mere idea of a country in the region having capacities and capabilities is unacceptable by Israel, and thus giving it the right, as we say between brackets, of self-defense by attacking Iran for this reason. And I think that this is a narrative that we have to fight, and foremost, before anything else, is to explain that these countries and these, whether in Palestine or in Iran and the rest of the Arab world who is attacked by Israel, like Syria and Lebanon, they have the right to defend themselves, and not Israel, who is enjoying this right wrongfully.
Right. What should the international community do in this respect? I mean, also the UN, the Arab League, how far can or act immediately as much as they can to contain this situation?
Well, the UN, as we know, is hindered by the veto power of the United States and sometimes even its allies like the UK and France. Actually, the UN have demonstrated that it has severe limitations to its powers. We've seen it recently when 14 countries have voted at the last UN Security Council resolution. The 14 countries have voted for the cessation of hostilities in Palestine, except for the American veto that hindered these efforts, and accordingly the United Nations is blocked to take serious actions against Israel, which is the country who actually is leading the aggression here. As for the Arab League, I think, well, I don't want to be harsh, but actually I think its credibility is at a historic level right now. We can see clearly divisions among member states, and of course we have to say that the normalization agreements between several Arab regimes and Israel have paralyzed our collective voice in a certain way. I don't see all the Arab countries on the same page, and I think this is actually also blocking the Arab League of becoming the voice that represents all the Arabs. We've seen in the last summit that was for Egypt, who really believes in the Arab world and the Arab nationalism in a certain degree. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was the only head of state who were present there, and he presented a very strong speech Israel and siding with Palestine and with the Palestinian people, and setting a new set of rules regarding the new world order that is dominating right now. While other Arab countries have chosen to be present on lower levels, which shows that their commitment for the Arab League is less than what we are expecting as Arab people. So I believe that we need to once again our priorities and to set our priorities and regional sovereignty in the right place, and try to work away from the external manipulation or the individual desires of each country. And I think that at least we can, for the time being, we can demand an immediate cessation of violations based on the international law, and try to support the de-escalation of this war before it spread to other areas, because if it continues like that, we are at risk of expanding to other countries in the region.
You think the international community fairly the Israeli attacks that has been repeated on the Iranian assets in Syria and different places or elsewhere?
I would rather say absolutely not. The international community, particularly the Western governments and administrations and institutions, have systematically turned a blind eye to Israel's cross-border aggressions, whether we are talking about Palestine, first of all, and then Syria and Lebanon, and now Iran. I think that Israel is the only country who has the right to actually wage wars cross-border and call it self-defense. This is something that has never been seen before in history, but of course, due to its alliance with the West, they permit this to Israel. It's always the pretext of self-defense that is that is only granted actually to Israel, never to any of the Arab countries, although they are the real one of who are self-defending itself. I mean, like Iran also the same way. We have to once again remember that this current war started by an Israeli aggression and did not start by an Iranian one. This is something for history to document, that Israel who started this war right now on Iran, and of course the pretext is always there, which is the self-defense thing. So in short, what I want to say, that the current global always describes resistance by non-Western nations or non-Western allies is always criminalized, while the aggression by Israel is sometimes applauded and welcomed under the name of self-defense. And of course, this shows the privilege and the exclusivity of the privilege of being backed by the Western states, and actually put us in a dilemma of proving that we are really defending ourselves and not trying to wage an aggression on Israel.
So to what extent is Iran reshaping the security architecture in the region and defending themselves to reach this situation?
Well, you mean what led us to this position, or now
Yes.
after the war?
Yes, and defending themselves and how the war continued so far.
Well, actually, Iran, of course, we have to be honest that Iran first took the first blow, which is a very wrong one, and actually it has, to a large extent, have shown how Iran is infiltrated by secret agencies backed by Israel. I think that the precision which many high officials, military officials were assassinated, and many nuclear scientists as well, shows that Iran were exposed to Israel. And not just that, I could even add that on the first strikes that were led by 200 airplanes, warplanes, Israeli war, the 200 came back, which shows to what extent Iran were focused on its missile program much more than its air defenses. And I think that this is a very big strategic mistake from the part of Iran. Iran should have given more thought to defend itself by missiles or whatever. I mean, 200 planes coming back from Iran after doing their first aggression show to which extent Iran was weak. However, Iran managed after that to put itself together, and it strike back, and it strike back quite brilliantly, and uses its missiles to target many military and many war legitimate aims inside Israel. And from that point on, we've seen the situation shifting. Israel is starting to be really scared, and the United States is starting to threaten even more, and so on. So Iran managed now to hurt Israel, and to hurt it deeply after the first wave that were actually addressed against Iran, and showed the vulnerability of the Iranian military and the Iranian revolutionary forces. So this is the first thing. And what I want to say here is that we have to be careful from the possibility of the United States entering the war, because once the United States enters, that means that it's going to attack directly all the nuclear sites of Iran. And this actually might trigger any nuclear radiations that could actually affect the whole region. And from here is the danger of allowing the U.S. to enter the war. We hope it will be contained within Iran and Israel until they are both at it and stop it, because the political will, for the time being, I see it absent in both countries, although Iran is ready to stop at a certain point without affecting its nuclear capabilities. But if it reaches its nuclear capabilities, then in this case Iran is will have to go all the way and to try to punish Israel for its aggression. But remain the main player in this, the United States, and how it's going to act. So far, President Trump is hesitant and reluctant to take serious measures, although he has threatened several times that he has had it with Iran and that he wants to take action. But until now, he is still restraining himself from taking any action, and we hope it will remain so, at least for the time being, before things get out of proportion.
So what are the global economic and geopolitical consequences of this confrontation, especially when it comes to energy? And I think also when we talk about the diplomatic relations among countries as well, many things changed.
Well, actually, I think that the most important thing is the right of the countries that do not have a Western support is to benefit from the international law that permits it to have peaceful nuclear positions and capacities and capabilities. I think this is the most important thing, and I think this is what Iran is fighting for, actually, that it has the right, like any other country in the world, as long as it is a country that has signed the NPT treaty, and as long as it is under the supervision of the NPT and so forth, that it has the right to enjoy this. However, the idea of giving privilege to a country who hasn't signed the NPT, such as Israel, is to enjoy whatever nuclear programs it wants to have because it's simply backed with the West. I mean, none of the Western countries is talking about the Israeli capabilities and the Israeli warheads. I mean, most reports are talking about the presence of what's between 100 to 300 warheads, nuclear warheads in Israel. And none of the Western countries are talking about this, and this is that it constitutes a violation to the international law. They even call what is going on right now the right of self-defense. So Israel, the country that has a history of aggression against its neighbors, Iran never attacked any neighboring country, who is a country who did not sign the NPT, against Iran, who is a signatory of the NPT, and yet the West is implementing Israel for what it has accomplished, and Iran for an unsubordinate country to their order, not to the world order, not to the international law order. And that's a big problem, because the idea is not to prove who is against the law and who is alongside the law. Actually, the idea is to be liked and be permitted to do so. So the international law doesn't have, unfortunately, the United States have made the international law unconsidered in this case. The United States is punishing Iran for having what is, according to the law, a right, while it's not taking any measures against Israel, who is violating the international law. And this shows to which extent we are suffering because of the American double standard and the Western double standard in general.
Ambassador Medhat, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for joining us. Moving on to a quick break, then we'll be back.